Paper Mache with Ms.Boley. This is part 2 of a series on how to build using paper mache. So if you haven't watched part 1 about how to mix the paste, go back and watch part 1. All right, part 2, we're going to learn how to prepare to build, and also we're going to go into building our paper mache bowl. So we're making a paper mache bowl. So what are you going to need? So you're going to need your bowl of mixed paste that you made earlier. You're going to need a bowl just from your kitchen. It can be a regular bowl that you eat out of, or it can be a bowl that you use for mixing. It could be a large bowl or a small bowl, whatever you like. And then you're going to need some newspapers or regular paper, if you don't have newspaper, ripped into strips. And I'm going to talk more about that later on. You'll need masking tape and a plastic bag. And if you don't have a plastic bag, if you no longer use plastic bags, you can use plastic wrap or tin foil. So there's some substitutions you can make at home if you need. So here is a picture of all of my materials all together, and there's my bowl and my plastic bag. Okay. So let's talk about what is a mold before we continue. So it is a hollow form, a 3D shape, that an artist will use to help them to build a sculpture. So sometimes they take the mold and they fill it with a material, like that cake pan that's right there in the picture. That would be filled with the material. And sometimes they use the mold and they drape the material on top of the mold. And that's what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be using a drape mold to make our paper mache bowls. So this is what we're basically doing. We're taking that bowl that we got from our kitchen, and we're going to flip it upside down, and then we're going to place our paper mache on the bottom part of the bowl when it's upside down, and it's gonna provide some support for the paper mache as it dries. And then we're gonna remove that bowl, and we'll have a bowl made of paper mache. Okay, let's get started. All right, so I have my plastic bag and my bowl and my masking tape. So this is just a glass bowl that I use for eating. As I mentioned before, you can choose a larger size or a smaller size, whatever works best for you. And then I'm going to cover my bowl with a plastic bag. And remember, if you don't have a plastic bag, there's other options. You can use plastic wrap or tin foil. I'm going to cover it, and then I'm going to just kind of tape it in place so that it doesn't wiggle around. And this is because I don't want the paper mache to stick to my bowl and get stuck to it. So it's going to act kind of as like a little barrier in between the paper mache and the bowl. And now I'm going to set this aside so I can prepare my paper. So I have my newspaper, and I also have some regular computer paper because I know not everyone gets the newspaper anymore. All right, you can also use other types of like scrapbooking paper or kind of like fancier papers, but I'm just going to use newspaper. So I have just a little section here. It's not too thick for me that I can't rip it, and I'm just going to tear about 1 inch, strips that are about 1 inch wide, and then I'm going to rip them in half so that they're not super long. So I'll continue to rip about 1 inch. These guys are probably about 1.5 inches, which is okay. I can always make them smaller once I start using the paper mache paste. All right, so I've prepared about 1 section worth. I have a little stack, and I think that's enough for the regular paper because I'm gonna also use white paper for mine. So I'm going to use the white paper on the outside of the bowl because white paper is easier to paint with light colors. So I'll do 1 layer of newspaper, and then my second layer will be with the computer paper. So I'm going to continue out by ripping 1 inch wide strips of the computer paper. And I'm ripping a stack of papers at once. I probably have about 5 sheets all stacked together. So now I have my papers prepared. My paper strips are ready to be used to paper mache. All right, so there's my paste that we've mixed earlier. And I like to set up in a specific way. So I put my paper strips on one side, and I put my paste, and then I put my object I'm gonna paper mache to the left, because I'm right-handed, so this works out well for me. So set up your station, and then we're gonna start by dipping our paper in, and we're gonna use our finger like a scissors, like in a scissors motion, like I just showed. And we're gonna try to remove the excess paste from the paper. But we also want the paper to be like covered on both sides, very covered on both sides with paste, but we don't want it to be too much. You'll know if it's too much, and then you can kind of just scoop some of the additional paste off with your fingers. So I'm going to use my fingers as scissors to kind of remove some of the paste. And then I found that my first strip was a bit too long, and it kind of overlapped onto the table. And I kind of just want it to be a little shorter, so I ripped my paper strip to be a little bit shorter. And then there, just now, I ended up having 2 pieces of paper at once. And I want to separate those ones, the pieces of paper that are sticking together, because I want to make sure that paste gets on both sides of the piece of paper. Because if it's only on one side, it won't stick very well. So that's what I'm doing. I'm just going to repeat the process. So dip the paper strip into the paste, remove the excess, and smooth it onto the bowl. And I'm gonna try to cover the whole thing with 1 layer of newspaper. And then I'm gonna cover 1 more layer with white paper. So I'm gonna fast forward a little bit, and I'll pause it to tell you some more important tips, but let's fast forward. All right, so I have most of the plastic bag covered, but I have some little tiny like spaces in between where I've put the strips going kind of draping over. So I'm gonna take a strip of paper, and I'm gonna kind of wrap it around the bottom little edge of the bowl, just to kind of strengthen the bowl a little bit. And then I really want that piece to not have lots of wrinkles. So I'm just doing my best to smooth it out and smush the paste really well into the paper, making sure the paper is really wet. And I'm going to do that all the way around the bowl. And it actually works better if you have shorter strips. So that's why I just ripped that strip there, because it doesn't wrinkle as much. And then where that strip that I kind of laid around the bottom there, I'm gonna, where that ends, I'm gonna try to cover it up with some other strips. So I'm just doing my best to make sure that this bowl doesn't have any big wrinkles and stuff. I'm just smoothing it out. I'm also noticing that I have tons of paper mache paste. So I'm just kind of using my fingers to get the extras off a bit, and smooth some more. So that's our goal, is as smooth as possible, but considering that this is paper mache and it's going to be really wrinkly, but we don't want to have any big pieces that aren't glued down that we can like grab onto and rip off. Layer 1 of newspaper is all done. Now I'm doing layer 2 with the white paper, and I'm doing exactly the same process. So I've done a time lapse so that you don't have to sit through all of the same exact process again. But so I'm doing the layering, kind of crossing over the middle of the bowl, and then I'm doing 1 little strip around the bottom so that it strengthens it up, and smoothing as best as I can. All right, so I'm all done. I'm just gonna clean up. I'm gonna save these paper strips. Maybe if I do some more paper mache another day, or you could recycle it. It's up to you. This paste, if you leave it out, it will go moldy. So if you want to save it, you can put it in the fridge, or you can just throw it out. I have to clean up my work area, so I'm going to grab a piece of newspaper and I'm going to carefully lift this guy up and try to kind of remove any of the paste that might be on the bottom lip there as much as I can. And I'm going to gently place it on a newspaper and I'm going to leave it alone for several days. And I'm going to use a cloth. I'm going to clean up my work area. So this kind of paper mache paste, if you let it dry, it will be very hard to clean off. So I strongly recommend just while it's wet, just take a cloth and wipe it up. If you got some on your floor or on your work surface, or if you get some on your clothes, put them in the laundry right away. Because it is washable, but it will be harder to wash off if it's let dry. Thanks for watching.